A lot of people who know me very well know that I used to be a part of the punk scene, the hardcore punk scene in Richmond, Virginia. And to make a long story short and a short story longer, I got into punk rock because when I was in high school, I used to like skateboard and BMX. So during the summertime of my 12th grade year, so right after I graduated from high school, I think. No. In the 11th grade, right at the end of my 11th grade year, there was a summertime program after the school year, right before you go into 12th grade, that prepped you for driver's ed. So I took a driver's education class that particular summer after 11th grade, and I met this white kid in my class, and he noticed that I had on a pair of Vans, and I was wearing Vans because I liked Vans, and I was into skateboarding, I was into BMX, and that was just the way I used to dress back then. I used to wear Wet Willies, which was a skateboarding brand, in Vans. And he liked Vans because he associated it with punk rock, so he thought I was a punk rocker, but I wasn't. I was a guy who liked skateboarding, but I had only listened to rap. I'm from a low income area. I'm from the hood, and I had never had white friends before. So, long story short, this guy and I became friends. And after the driver's ed program was over, he invited me to a punk rock show, and it was inside of a garage, and I was so overwhelmed by the whole experience because I had never been to a rock show, punk rock show, any kind of rock show. I had never even been to a concert before at that point. And this particular show was inside someone's garage. And mind you, we're not in a suburban neighborhood. We're downtown in the metropolitan area of the city. And literally, there are row houses that have little teeny garages in the backyard. And the show was inside the garage. And it was like $3 a ticket or something like that. So after that first show, I got connected with the scene. Eventually I started meeting people and I formed my own little friendship circle. And I loved it. I loved everything about punk rock because I loved what it represented. I loved the idea of going against the mainstream. I love the idea of embracing who you are as an individual in opposition to trends and what's popular, because a lot of times people strive to meet the standards and quotas of mainstream society to the point where they actually abandon who they are as a person. So I loved it because it represented individualism. The people were against racism, and they were pretty good people who had good principles and good morals. The majority of the scene was white. I'm black, so there was no issues with that. They embraced me, they liked me, they treated me equally, and that was another thing that I liked. I love the fact that for the first time in my life, I'm surrounded by white people who I had never spent any time around. I only seen white people on television or seen them walking and passing in public on the streets. I had never actually had a friendship with a white person. So it was cool to be this guy from the hood who was able to connect with these strange people who I only seen on television and seen walking by on the streets. I never actually had a relationship with a white person before. So through punk rock, I started to meet people outside of the black race for the first time. And I actually credit that for helping to open my mind about things. So when I was 17, 16, I was introduced to varieties of people, you know, white people. Then eventually I started bumping into other people in the punk scene who were of different ethnicities. So I love the punk rock scene because it gave me the opportunity to be friends with a diverse group of people. The reason I left the punk rock scene is because I started finding a lot of hypocrisy in it. The punk rock scene was supposed to have principles. It was supposed to be a movement that was about being better than mainstream society. Wherever the mainstream society failed at, we were supposed to excel in. And I just didn't see that happening. And one thing that I noticed about the guys in the punk rock scene was that it was just a hobby to them. They really did it for fun. It was an interest. It wasn't something that they really held on to as a passion. The majority of the kids lived in these nice suburban areas, really, really nice homes, exclusive neighborhoods. And in order to rebel against that suburban construct, they would get into punk rock because they either were embarrassed that they came from a family that had a lot of money, or they wanted to be themselves and not be attached to their parents' success. But what I noticed is after years and years of being in the punk rock scene, once we elevated past being teenagers and got to be adults, they transitioned into mainstream society. They went from being these rebellious teenagers who did not like mainstream society, who wanted to change the world for the better, who wanted to take all the flaws of society and turn it upside down and make it better. But once they became adults, they just joined mainstream society. They went to college and they fit in, and they dropped the whole punk rock thing. So once I started seeing that happening, I realized, hey, this is just a phase that people go through in life. Punk rock isn't something that you can make a career out of, because of course in the real world you've got to pay bills and you've got to make something of yourself in order to be self-sustaining. I understand that, but at the same time, it's just I just find a lot of hypocrisy in that. To have someone who's so philosophical about the way that they view life, so philosophical and so critical of the way that they look at mainstream society, and then when they get older, they join it. And then on top of that, whenever my punk rock friends would drop me off into my apartment complex, they would always say things like, damn, you live in the ghetto. And it wasn't really the ghetto. I mean, I'm from the real ghetto. So the apartment complex that I lived in at the time, to me, it was a very nice apartment community. But to these guys who lived in these exclusive suburbs with these really, really expensive houses, it was the hood to them. And once that started happening, I was like, I'm more punk rock than you guys are. I mean, punk rock is about not being judgmental. It's about not judging people based on their financial success. So why do you guys keep making these comments about me living in the hood when you guys are supposed to be punk rockers? So I found a lot of hypocrisy in it, but I do still like punk rock. And a lot of people consider me to be an enigma because I'm like I'm from the hood. If you know me, I'm from the hood, but I never embraced being hood. I never thought it was cool to be a gangster or anything like that, but I witnessed that lifestyle from afar. I seen it. I seen everything that comes with that lifestyle. I was always intelligent enough to know that I didn't want to be a part of it, and I credit punk rock for kind of coming into my life at the right time at 16 years old. So I was so busy going to shows, traveling the country in vans with local bands in Richmond, that I didn't get an opportunity to get involved in the streets because most people get involved in the streets as teenagers. I was into punk rock. I was going to shows, buying vinyl. I was having fun, so I really didn't get sucked into the streets. So I credit punk rock for that. But yeah, I mean, I'm not embarrassed about my punk rock past. I embrace it. I still listen to the music from time to time. I like hip hop. I like 90s hip hop, old school hip hop. I like hip hop that actually has substance. But I still listen to punk rock. I listen to a lot of 70s soul music. I mean, I'm pretty much, I just listen to everything. I don't limit myself to one genre. But yeah, that's just a little bit of a spill of my punk rock past for the people who find it interesting. Peace.